Hi everybody, welcome to week 3 of Scholarly Dissemination. I hope at this point you have started working with your group to put together your presentations for this coming week for the presentations that will occur on Tuesday. That will happen at our regularly scheduled time of 1:30 to 3:30. And we will be in classroom 203. I know last time we moved classrooms just because you were already meeting in there for admin, but we'll be in our regularly scheduled classroom of room 203 from 1:30 to 2:30 for presentations. And this week, that's really the content that you should be focused on. You have a lot of information in the online portion about how to create a good presentation. That's not just good to know stuff or fluffy stuff for you to kind of breeze by. Make sure that you're taking notes on what makes a good visual presentation and verbal presentation, because that will be components of what you're judged on during your presentation skills or during your presentation on your client case. So try and make sure that you're paying attention to all of those little nuances that make presentations really great. I did get to read through a lot of your Padlets from last week, which was really interesting. I noticed a couple people using the like buttons, which is great. Kind of gives people feedback that their stuff is being read. I commented on some people's, not everybody's, but all of your articles and all of your critiques of the articles were really interesting. A thread that I noticed throughout, which I think is excellent of you to pick up, is that a lot of you noticed that we weren't really vocalizing what OT brings to the table in a lot of these situations. We're so outwardly focused on what our client outcomes are and what the impact was on society and what the importance of the issue is, and we're very focused on advocating for the client, advocating for the environment, the diagnosis, whatever it is that we're working on, and educating people on those areas. But what we fail to do a lot as OTs is self-advocate for the profession and for our role with different groups and populations, and educate the community on what we do as OTs. So I think a lot of you picked up on that in your articles, and recognizing, though you may not have used those words, but that we do a really good job of providing the client story and being good storytellers of what's going on external to us, but not really including ourselves in that piece and the important role that we play in that person's recovery or in that adaptation and modification that really made it possible for people to live the life that they wanted to live. So make sure that you recognize that when you are documenting, when you are when you're doing presentations, when you're doing in-services, when you're speaking to colleagues, you don't want to cram it down their throat, OT's the best, OT's the best, OT's the best, because that can get a little bit annoying as well. But you do want to be aware that you need to make people know that your profession is important and what you do as a profession and what you bring to the table. And I say even documentation, because deep down at the core of it, documentation is a type of dissemination. It's telling people what we do and what our patient outcomes are. And that is every bit as important of a piece of dissemination as a journal article, as opposed to presentation as a conference presentation. And so it would be really great during your documentation for you to include, and you should include, what you're doing as a therapist and where you're important as a therapist. You'll notice this in your GERO class when we grade a lot of your reports, and probably back from process when we graded your evaluation reports, talking about needing to include what you did. That yes, you want to focus on the client and you want it to be client-centered documentation, and talk about how the client was able to do this now. You know, they were able to dress independently. Great. But if you keep telling everybody that the client did this, and this is the client story, and these are the client successes, what role did you play as the OT? Why are you important in that scenario? Or were you not even necessary? And we often talk ourselves out of being a necessary component because we're so focused and we're so good at advocating for our clients and being client-centered that we almost go overboard and forget ourselves. So even within your documentation, remember to advocate for the role that you play in there, and say, client was able to perform lower body dressing with cues from the therapist to improve sequencing, and make sure that you are part of that, and in that dissemination component as well. So I really enjoyed reading about your critiques of the articles that you found, and you found some really interesting ones as well. Don't be afraid to go in and comment on each other's and give each other feedback. You know, you want to help each other and communicate with each other and be collaborative in this process. This class is a lot about collaboration, even if we're trying not to beat the discussion board horse to death. And then the presentation case studies, remember you will be doing self and peer critiques on those. You'll be doing them directly in class, so you don't have to do anything ahead of time on that. Just make sure your presentation is prepared. If you have any questions, let me know. And also, if you have any problems or you want to go over anything, I'm available in person in room 105 from 12 to 1 on Wednesdays if you need me, or you can make an appointment in advance. When you're doing your presentations, you do not have to dress professionally or in business attire. You can be in your simple plain attire. We're not recording them, and I don't need you to dress up any particular way for the presentation. Your typical dress would be fine, whether you prefer lab clothes or lecture clothes. It makes no difference to me. All right, let me know if you need anything, and I hope you're having a great week.